Good morning. It is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. You're listening to the RED-C Roundup. I'm your host, Deacon Mike Beauvais. And as always, we have a wonderful show planned for you this morning. My guest this morning is Father Jonah Teller. He is a friar in the Order of Preachers, a Dominican, but he is also a member of the Hillbilly Thomists. And if you have not heard of the Hillbilly Thomists, you need to check it out. They play bluegrass music, which we're going to go into. How do Dominicans end up playing bluegrass, especially as popular as they have gotten? They're touring all over the country. So good morning, Father Jonah. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thanks, Deacon Mike. It's great to be with you.
It is a pleasure to have you. Now, before we go into the Hillbilly Thomists, I always like talking to the guests about their faith journey, especially someone who is reasonably young, at least compared to me. And how did you see your faith journey as a child, and how'd you end up here?
Wow. Well, I'm a cradle Catholic, born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, and one of 7 kids, homeschooled. So I guess pretty down the middle Catholic in that regard. I was an altar server. When we were raised, my folks told us, God has a plan for you, and it could be that you're going to be a teacher, a lawyer, a priest, a plumber, a carpenter, whatever. The main point was God has a plan for you, and you just trust in that, and that He'll lead you to what He wants you to do. So I always grew up thinking of the priesthood as like, theoretically acknowledgeable option, but not something I ever really particularly wanted to do. But after college, I started thinking about it more seriously, and eventually just one day realized that, I wanted to be a priest. Of course, that's the postcard of the book, but that'll do for now.
Wonderful. Now, there is a difference between becoming a diocesan priest and choosing a religious order. What was it that made you choose the Dominicans over perhaps anything else?
They ran my home parish. So, very little thought. I was like, I want to be a priest. Priests wear white. These are the good priests that I know. And that was the first place and subsequently the only place I looked. I really just, the good priestly examples of the men that I'd known growing up at St. Gertrude's in Cincinnati. And so the Dominican Order was the first place I looked. And I went on a retreat at the Dominican House of Studies in Washington, D.C. And I just fell in love. It was like hearing the harmony to your soul, the way of life that the friars have. So I was immediately attracted and really, seriously, didn't look anywhere else. I just signed up.
For our listeners who might not be familiar with the life in a religious order, and especially the Dominicans, what does the normal daily life of a Dominican friar look like?
So Dominicans are consecrated religious, so we take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. We live together in community, so there are 6 friars who all live here together at St. Joseph's in New York City. And our life is one where you could say that the skeleton is prayer. So we have parts of times of prayer. We pray the Liturgy of the Hours, the Divine Office. It's a series of psalms and hymns and readings and prayers that every priest and religious is bound to pray. And we do that in common, in choir together. So it's a day that's punctuated and framed by prayer, by the sacrifice of the Mass, and then just sharing your life in common with the brothers. The Dominicans, the Order of Preachers is the technical name of the order, we're dedicated especially to preaching for the salvation of souls. So our motto is truth. So we're here to tell the truth in love and to lead people towards Christ, who is the truth. So a lot of our ministries are focused particularly on preaching.
So in this life of prayer, where did bluegrass music come in?
Well, doesn't it come in for everybody? I mean, isn't everybody just kind of playing music? I mean, divine providence. I guess that's a blanket answer for everything, though. Everything is divine providence. There was a number of friars who we all ended up at the Dominican House of Studies, which is our seminary, our house of studies in DC. There were like 7 or 8 of us who ended up in the House of Studies together studying there as student brothers, and we all had different musical backgrounds. Music had been very important for us. I got really into folk and American music at the University of Dallas, where there's a tradition called Friday nights of people getting together most every Friday night to play roots music, Irish music, Americana, folk. And so I got really into that. My brother also went to UD, and he actually had his own band while he was there and after he graduated, called the Stillwater Hobos. And so he was a recording musician. And then we ended up at the House of Studies together. There's Father Justin Bolger had a record deal with RCA Victor, lived in Nashville, was a touring musician, recorded, also was a sound engineer. Father Peter studied music at Notre Dame. Father Joseph was in the marching band. Father Timothy's just good at music in general. And then there were a couple of older priests, Father Thomas Joseph White and Father Austin Litke, who had played bluegrass folk music together before we entered. And so we all sort of smashed together at the House of Studies, and we just played music because we liked to. And it turned into an album one day because for a few years, our choir at the House of Studies, of which we were members, we would record albums of sacred music, and we would sell those albums to support the student tape. And then one year, the student master, the priest who was in charge of us, said, well, why don't you try doing an album of the stuff that you guys play for fun? And we said, sure. So we tried it, recorded it, and it went to number 3 on the Billboard Bluegrass Charts, which was not what we had expected or planned for, but that was a really joyful thing. So we've kept doing it, and we just released our 4th album, Marigold, almost exactly 1 month ago. So it's been a real joy, but definitely not something you expect to do in religious life. I actually remember when I was a novice, so in your first year in the order, I was talking to my novice master because I'd played guitar, and you had to have a hobby in the novitiate. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll play guitar. But then, like, you're a very idealistic young novice. It's like, should I really be spending time playing guitar when I could be, contemplating the higher things? And I expressed this to the novice master. He was like, don't be stupid. God will use this in ways that you don't have any idea. And so he was right. Here we are.
You actually brought up another question I was going to ask later, but I'm going to have to pause that and go back to the name of the group, because
sure.
I love Flannery O'Connor, and so the name the Hillbilly Thomists is actually taken from a quotation that she made about herself. And how did you all choose that as the name of your group?
Well, Father Thomas Joseph White and Father Austin Litke, those 2 older priests, they'll be angry if I call them older, but they're older than us. They had been playing music together before we all entered the order, the rest of us, and they would play at house parties and things like that. And people asked them for a name, and they both loved Flannery O'Connor. They both have roots in the South, and they knew that quote where she said, anyone who's read my novel Wise Blood says I'm a hillbilly nihilist, whereas I'm actually a hillbilly Thomist. So they love that because, hillbilly's got that kind of Appalachian, folk, woodsy, simple connotation. And then a Thomist is somebody who studies the thought of St. Thomas Aquinas, the great Dominican theologian. So they had been calling themselves the Hillbilly Thomists. And then the rest of us kind of came on some years later and basically just took the name. Like, that's a cool name. We'll use that. And we still don't know if we asked them for permission or for forgiveness for that. But anyway, they joined the group, and so it's all been love, as they say. Yeah.
You were saying as a novitiate, you were, concerned about, spending time playing a guitar when the inclination is that you should be praying all the time. But before we came on the show, I was talking to Caleb, and one of the things that I find fascinating is that for centuries, the driving force of art was the Catholic Church. And we no longer talk in that sense. And yet it is fascinating to me to see, especially Dominican friars, sort of take up that mantle and not necessarily play religious music, but just play good music, play art. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So Joseph Pieper was a German philosopher. He talks about the word culture. So you know what the root of culture is cult, cultus, which means worship. So worship and culture are inextricably linked. Your culture is going to be an expression of what you worship. And at earlier days in history, the culture of the Western world was Catholic, was Christian. And so the broader culture was something that radiated out from the heart of whatever the world worshiped. So when we're worshiping God, that's going to affect culture in a broad way if the whole world is at least nominally Catholic. Nowadays, of course, in the West, Christianity is, diminishing in some places. And I live in Manhattan. There's great reason for hope in the growth of the church here. There are really some really positive, good stories here. But it's also the case that, numerically at least, we live in a post-Christian world. And so the heart of culture, which still exists, isn't flowing from a worship of God. But, that shouldn't stop us from still worshiping God and letting that flow out into whatever small orbit of our lives it is. So with the band, we just loved playing music together. And we very clearly, we don't mean to play liturgical music. Our music is not meant to be played in a church. It's meant for the front porch. But the front porch needs God just as much as the sanctuary does. And so we just play the music that gives joy to our hearts, and it flows out from there. But it does have its heart in the worship of God, but it should flow out into all the corners of your world.
Now, the genre that you all play is bluegrass, which doesn't necessarily come from Cincinnati, Ohio. But what draws you to bluegrass?
Well, I kind of squirm when I hear that. So because this is very niche, and basically there's probably 2 people listening who will care about this at all. But that's never stopped a Dominican before, so why should it stop me now? I wouldn't say we're technically a bluegrass band, and that's for all the true bluegrass people who they don't even play anywhere half fast enough for that. There's a strong bluegrass element in our style. We've got a banjo, we've got mandolin, and we do play bluegrass songs. I'd say more properly, we're probably Americana, but nobody knows what Americana even really describes. So we'll accept being called a bluegrass band. I would say though, as far as Cincinnati goes, there's a pretty good bluegrass scene there. You got Rick Hayes making music and guitars out there. He was a guy who taught me guitar, and there's big circles of bluegrass players. And then also other members of the band, they come from, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, places that would have, definitely more established roots in the bluegrass scene. But also I think bluegrass matches well with what we do because there is a really inherently religious aspect of so many bluegrass songs in the tradition. So it's very easy to slip into that current as well.
Now, you already mentioned that your first album went to number 3 on the Billboard Bluegrass Charts. Was that a surprise to you all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely wasn't the plan. We just put it up on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon and went to class, and then got a phone call from Billboard saying we need your band photo. So yeah, we thought that, we knew that people liked the music, but we didn't have any illusions about it being as broadly popular as it has been. But the music has continued to be popular. Of the 4 albums we've released, 3 have charted, have landed in the top 10 Billboard Bluegrass Charts, and Marigold, our most recent one, has set the highest mark. It debuted at number 2 and stayed there, and for at least the past 3 weeks, it's been on the chart. I don't know what the latest chart has today, but we've held steady there, so in the top 10. So that's been really exciting, but definitely not something that you even set as a goal.
How much influence did the popularity of the first album have on you all deciding, well, we need to do more of this and bring out a second album?
Honestly, little, I would say. I mean, the if it had been a total flop and nobody had bought it, maybe we would have spent our time on something else. But sincerely, we play music in a large way because we love doing it. It's a joy to play music. It's a joy to create, to write songs, and to spend time with your brothers figuring that out. So, yeah, the success of the album does have an influence on making sure that we do that regularly. And it also, frankly, it makes sure that we can actually financially make the albums happen. It costs money to record albums and to package them and distribute them. But beyond that, there's just a deep joy that we all have in the music itself that fuels the project.
Now, the standard way that friars keep themselves busy is contemplation and study and preaching.
Correct.
Do you see the process of writing music as being part of that?
I do. You can especially see that I think of Father Thomas Joseph's songs and Father Justin. Oh, actually, the songs of all the guys, but Father Thomas Joseph and Father Justin are our main songwriters. And yeah, there you can really see a really beautiful marriage of life experience and also theological study and prayerful contemplation of God and of divine things that comes together in really funny ways. Like the first verse of Holy Ghost Power that Father Thomas Joseph White wrote is from the day I found out you were telling me lies, I've been living off of grits, whiskey, and moon pies, trying to find my place, launching prayers into space and staring into heaven at a bread that's unleavened, which is just like a sentence that you would never think to hear from anybody, but it's this zany yet also powerful, theologically astute distillation of this soul who's in a really weird place. So yeah, there's many really, we are truly hillbilly Thomists, I would say. The name is accurate.
And I think what I find fascinating about the music is that it is so indicative of the human condition, that struggle between living in this world and living for the next. And I think, like the line you just quoted, all of us at one point or another have sensed something similar to that. And so
yes, absolutely. I would say a lot of our songs, strangely, are about death. They carry with it a real strong sense of the temporary nature of this world and living for the other side is the title of our second album. And a lot of our songs are about confronting the brokenness of this world, but with a real strong hope in God's promises for the world to come.
Memento mori. And so when you play the music, because you all have been touring a whole bunch of places.
That's right. Yeah, we went on a big tour.
When you play this music, what kind of reception do you see from the crowds? And I think you just don't draw religious people, you draw secular people to the concerts also. Are they surprised to see friars up there doing the music?
Well, my favorite type of fan is somebody who finds the band and has no idea that they're priests, and then finds out that they're priests. Like I just got a message from a buddy of mine. He said he was out golfing somewhere, and his friend had one of our songs on his golf playlist, and he said like he had never heard. We just randomly came up on his radio playlist, and he added us. He liked it, and he had no idea we were priests. So that's kind of my favorite kind of listener. But you get a real mix of people, and that's one of the real delights of being out on the road is getting to meet the people who have discovered your music and to hear how the songs have impacted their lives or what's important to them. what songs stand out, and then the stories they tell you are really, really beautiful and incredible. Just either the pain it helps them navigate or the joy that they have. It's a real great experience.
Now, this next question is sort of like asking a parent, which of your children is your favorite?
I love all our songs.
If you had to choose of the 4 albums, the one you were stuck listening to, which one would you choose to be on your playlist if you couldn't choose any of the others?
Wow. Marigold. It's the newest album, so it's the shiniest right now. It'd be very close between Holy Ghost Power and Marigold, but I'd say Marigold. We all tend to, it's kind of the same way. We record a song, and in that song, we're like, that's the best song. Then we record a new song. That's the best song. So we record an album. That's the best album. But there are just some really lovely, powerful, good songs on that album. So it's really close, though, man. I don't know. But I'll just say Marigold because you're forcing my hand.
Well, now, you said you don't do as much of the writing as Father Joseph, and so
Father Justin and Father Thomas Joseph,
yeah. Father Justin and Father Thomas Joseph do the majority of the writing, and I would assume that you, as a member of the band, are really pleased with the product that they're putting out, the songs that they're writing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And have you ever tried your hand at writing, and how many of them make it to the album?
Sure, yeah. So on Marigold, I have a song. It's very humbly called Jonah. So there you go. Tells you everything you need to know about me, I guess. And I worked on the song Jonah for 3 years. I'm a very slow writer. I wanted to write a song about the prophet Jonah. He's a very difficult, hard to get to know kind of guy. Very confusing. The book of Jonah is small, but also filled with, confusion, especially about the main character, his motivations. And so I wanted to write a song about him, and I came up with some chords. I had a melody I liked. I had a chorus that worked, and the verses just weren't coming together well enough. So eventually I was like, hey, guys, I need help. And so our band manager, Paul, he's not a priest, he's the brother-in-law of Father Justin, helps us with a lot of our stuff. He's also, a songwriter in his own right. He wrote these tremendous lyrics that worked really well. So I love those lyrics. And they're also the thing that people love most about the song too. It's like, I love that line you said. It's like, yes, I did not write that. So yeah, I've started to write a song or two, and then Marigold has a couple songs from Father Peter that are just really lovely, really excellent songs. And Father Timothy's written a couple songs. So everybody's also contributing to the album in their own way, especially when we're recording. We'll sit around and we'll just jam on the songs because guys have written the songs, and it'll be like chords, lyrics, and a chorus. And then the whole band will sort of circle up and just play through them. And it's like the song kind of emerges out of that at the same time.
Now, when you are on tour, how do you keep the fraternal life of being a friar in that tour life?
Yeah. Well, on this last tour, I actually thought about St. Dominic, the founder of our order. I thought about him a lot. He spent much of his life on the road. Now, granted, I'm in a minivan. He was walking. He would walk across Europe. He would walk from Paris to Rome, more than once. He would just travel Europe on foot. So much of his life is on the road. And that's a good thing to reflect on, since travel, as everybody knows, it really upsets your regular rhythm, takes you out of just even your physical setting that you're used to. And it makes you have to really be intentional about what you're doing. So as far as the fraternal life, though, we're good about that. Since we're all here together to serve God primarily, we would make sure that we're praying together. Of course, so our days would often be we'd get up, we would say mass, we have breakfast, get into the van, and then pray morning prayer and office of readings on the road, pray rosary together, and then you'd fit in midday prayer somewhere, evening prayer, the show. So it's there together. And as far as the fraternal aspect of it goes, well, I mean, try locking yourself in a minivan with a bunch of guys, and you'll get fraternal very fast. So iron sharpens iron, souls sharpen souls. But we have a really good band culture. It's a real joy because we keep the main thing the main thing.
Now, since your first album came out and you started touring, has the tour group gotten bigger? Do you have roadies? Do you have...
No. The band it's just the band basically. It'd be great to have another friar or two come along and help with the logistics. But no, it's a pretty stripped down production. We've got, again, our band manager, Paul. He doesn't travel with us, but he's helping with a lot of logistics on the computer, like designing and ordering merch. But we're loading up the van. We're carrying everything. We're setting up our merch table. We're getting volunteers to help sell the merch. We're setting up the instruments. We're tearing it down at the end of the show. So it's pretty straightforward.
Do you enjoy touring, or do you prefer being back at your friary?
That's a great question. I mean, I love touring, but part of the thing that I love about touring is that it's got a start time and an end time. I would have a different relationship with it if it was what I did all the time. For us, 50 weeks out of the year, we're just priests. We're hearing confessions, we're teaching. I'm in a parish, so I'm hearing confessions, saying mass, meeting with people, doing baptisms, doing wedding prep. Other guys are university professors or college chaplains, so they're doing that. And then 2 weeks out of the year, 2 or 3 weeks out of the year, we're doing music. So that ratio gives something like a tour, recording an album, a certain excitement and extraordinariness of it that makes you really love it and savor it. But if we were told, instructed by our superiors that we're going to take this on the road, that was going to be our full-time assignment, we would also love that as well. But the perspective of it being a very, very part-time thing gives it a lot of excitement. So it's a real thrill to go on tour. And it's also nice to be back in the priory doing your regular life.
Now, you said that you were in charge of a parish. Do your parishioners know that you're famous?
Some of them do, which I guess means I'm not famous. I'm not famous, but known, I guess. I'm the parochial vicar, so I'm the number 2 priest at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Greenwich Village, New York City, so downtown Manhattan. And a number of the parishioners do. And then the pastor wrote in the bulletin when I went out for tour, he said where I was going. So a lot of people got excited about that and wanted to ask questions about it. So that's been a lot of fun to share that with the parishioners.
Now, Greenwich Village in New York is pretty artsy. I mean, there's a large art community there. So I would think that just from that perspective, you're being parochial vicar there would make them think that you're part of the community more than you would normally expect.
I think so. Music's got a really nice uniting power to it, that people are just united in the song or in the melody or whatever it is. It just unites people in a really nice way. And so, Greenwich Village is a pretty, we'll say it's a pretty various village. And there are people who are really delighted to learn that I play music. People who had never set foot in a church, but you walk around outside on the sidewalks. I'm outside a lot. So you meet people, you have conversations, and they're really charmed and very interested in that a priest would do anything other than just say mass or pray or something. Anytime a priest does something that's remotely non-priestly, people are very fascinated by that.
One of the things that I think the church doesn't do as well as it could is sort of highlight that aspect of it, that a priest is a regular person and but especially in your case where you have a connection to the community, would it be helpful, for instance, for you just play guitar outside the parish?
I mean, we've done that, yeah. So in the middle of the tour, kind of near the start of the tour, Father Justin and Father Simon got stranded by a flight. They were gearing up to go somewhere, and so they were stranded in New York for a day. And we went to Washington Square Park, just a block away, and played music and met a lot of great people, had a lot of fascinating conversations. So also, I mean, if you look like this, people kind of look at you and talk to you anyway. So yeah, but the music is an additional way of catching people's ears and then their eyes and hopefully their souls.
Well, Bishop Barron always says that in a world that no one believes in truth and goodness anymore, beauty is the way that we're going to make a connection with people that do not follow the church.
And well, that's the first time I've heard a banjo called beautiful, but we'll take it. Sure.
Banjo music can be beautiful. But
all right, you heard it here first.
But the thing is that have you all looked at that as an outreach from the church into the community, or has it just sort of been a byproduct?
Oh, well, sure. We know that the music we play will catch people unawares and can reach an audience that doesn't care about the church or maybe doesn't even believe in God necessarily. So we do know that it's there, and that's a motivating factor for why we play, certainly. And it's a real joy for people to find that people like the music on its own merits. And then that also helps, I think, give it a note of authenticity and credence to conversations with us about the faith. They've already sort of been won over to this aspect of our life, and so it makes them more kindly disposed towards hearing about the Lord.
Speaking of which, I noticed on the website you all noted that being consistent preachers of the incarnation, that you're working on a Christmas album. How long?
Right.
How long have you considered doing one of those?
We wanted to do one for a few years now, and then we finally just bit the bullet. So when we were recording Marigold, at the end, we just really crammed in a couple sessions and got some work done on a few songs that we really liked. And then a few months later, a few of us got together in another place to had a very concentrated 36 hours of recording. And we like what we've got. There's still some work that needs to be done, but we're hoping to release some Christmas music, hopefully even this year, and then a full album a little bit further down the road. But yeah, we're really excited for that, and we are anxious for people to hear it and see what they think.
Now, some of the music that you play has connections to traditional Protestant hymns. How much thought it was put into, as a Catholic group, playing songs that traditionally everybody knows, Catholics and Protestants, so you're reaching a much wider audience by doing that. Was that part of consideration, or?
Not so much, frankly. I mean, we know that'll happen, but we really we play the music that moves us. We write the songs that we want to write and that express the truth as best as we can, and just have the joy of the gospel in there. And it is the case that, we'll find songs like Father Justin found the hymn "Just As I Am," which is Billy Graham would use that hymn for his altar calls at his revivals. And Father Justin loved the lyrics, and then he wrote his own melody for the song, and it's been really moving for people. And that's really lovely to see that music captivate somebody else, maybe from another denomination. And we really are grateful for that. I can't say, though, that we have said, all right, for every album, we need to have one that's like reaching out across the aisle. We just, we write songs about Christ, and we trust that, all the brothers and sisters in the Lord hopefully can hear it.
Now, as friars, you mentioned you've taken a vow of chastity, poverty, and obedience. So, since you have taken a vow of poverty, I am assuming that with the proceeds from the albums, you have not yet bought a yacht. So,
Well, I mean, no comment on that, of course. So everything we have, we own in common, and I mean, so the proceeds from the band, they go to cover the expenses of recording the album and touring, and then we set aside some to cover the next project. And we've had various very generous benefactor to help start the whole project, but then we've tried to be good stewards of it. And then the albums and the tours are very successful, and they allow us to both cover expenses, set aside some money for the next project, and then we can also send excess funds to the Dominican House of Studies in DC, which was the initial reason for recording the album. We wanted to support the brothers who were in formation. At that time, we were the brothers in formation. But now it's a great joy to know that we can make a fair contribution to the expenses and costs of training men for 6 or 7 years to study philosophy, study theology, and to learn to be a good preacher of grace. So it's a great joy to be able to contribute to that. If there's a yacht, they've not invited me yet to it. So waiting to hear back on that, I guess.
Yes, they're not going to let you know. No,
they never do.
How supportive?
You don't want Jonah on a yacht either.
Exactly. You'll get tossed overboard.
Yeah.
How supportive have your superiors been of all this?
Very. They love it. Actually. The last provincial, there's a new one now. He's also supportive of it. The last provincial, we convinced him to come up and be on the album. We got him to hit a cowbell a couple of times, and he loved that. So he signed his Christmas cards to us like Cowbell Ken. Like, he was just so thrilled to be able to do that. The superiors are very happy with it. I think the success of the albums helps show sort of proof of concept, and that it reaches lots of people in very creative ways for the order of preachers. So you want to preach the gospel in whatever way you can. So it's been great. Of course, we live a life of obedience, so we're very grateful and want to be good, obedient sons of St. Dominic. So it's a great joy that our superiors are in favor of it.
We're almost at the end of the interview. We got 4.5 minutes left, and before I close up on this, I wanted to ask, now, Marigold was your last album. Are you already working on the next one?
We're already working on the next one. I mean, in the sense that we have set aside time. So late next summer, we'll get together and record an album. So we kind of this cadence of we'll do an album, we'll tour, we'll do an album, we'll tour. So we toured this summer. And next summer, we know we'll be spending a couple weeks together in July and August working on an album. I'm already noodling around on some chords and things. So my song should be ready to go by 2030, so album number 8 or whatever. But guys are already writing songs and sharing them around. We'll send a little scratchy recordings that we make on the computer, on the phone, just send them around to the band. So I'm already looking forward to doing that. It'll be a great experience. So yes, the HT Nation out there can know that there's an album coming, not soon, but eventually.
Now, one of the reasons I was thrilled to have you on the program is when young people see you, and this is the wonderful thing I've seen about vocations in recent days or recent years in the church, is we have young, exciting priests coming into the church. And I think for young people listening to you and seeing you, you're not the obvious image that people have of priests. It's usually someone my age that, is dour and hangs out of the parish, and you don't ever see him smile. I think that it's absolutely wonderful for young people to see that the priesthood is so multifaceted that, there are things that you can do as a priest that play music, do art.
Yeah.
And so I think it's wonderful for you to be a model for that. And thank you for coming on the air and doing this interview.
Well, thanks, Deacon Mike. Yeah, being a priest is the greatest joy of my life. God is so generous. I can't imagine a better life. And, if there are young men listening to this podcast, this interview, think about being a priest. I'll just say this: God will not be outdone in generosity. He's way more creative and way more good and generous than we can even imagine. So give it some thought, give it some prayer.
Is there any plan for you all to tour in Texas?
Oh man, we have actually talked about doing a Texas specific tour. We'd love to do something like that. Now, I mean, we've got lots of people who want us to come play all over the place, but we have a deep love for Texas. I love it. Texas, it's the greatest state. I'm on record. It's great. No place like it. So we'd love to come to Texas, and hopefully one day soon.
Well, if you're planning on coming to Texas, you have to come to Texas A&M University.
Pig 'em.
It is the largest Catholic university that's a state institution. So you're welcome anytime. So again, Father Jonah, thank you so much for being on the air. Thank you for playing music. And again, as I mentioned, art has been in service of religion for centuries. And I think that you all doing it the way you're doing is such a wonderful response to the lack of the Catholic faith in art. So thank you very much. I want to remind all our listeners that we have part 2 coming up after the break, and don't leave us yet. And again, thank you, Father Jonah. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks, Deacon Mike. God bless you.
God bless you.
Glory be to the Father, and